Awesome. Thank you all for your responses. Awesome, Daniel. Me too, me too.
Very nice.
Yes.
Hello.
Hey, Leopoldo. Thanks for
Hello.
joining
Gracias.
in. Yeah.
Sorry
Yes,
for the
yes.
delay.
It's all good.
Couldn't find the link.
Mhm.
No worries. I'm glad you all are here. All right, awesome. Well, if folks haven't still I would still love to know where everyone's coming from, and then uh again, what do you hope to learn and/or gain from today? Yeah, it looks like a good chunk of people are here, so I'm gonna continue on. So, welcome everyone to Water, People, and Beyond, exploring justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in the water management field, an online conversation of Jedi values. My name is Angel Beteran. I am the Jedi intern for the North American Lake Management Society. And just a few things as we continue. So for accessibility, if you like, you can turn on closed captioning by going to more and then pressing CC captions at the bottom of your screen. And if you have any questions, there will be a portion later on in our panel to have to put into our Q&A box. So just keep that in mind and I'll move forward. So for today, we're gonna talk a little bit about some acknowledgements, talk a little bit about the NALMS and JEDI committee, have a little short JEDI presentation, and then finish off with a very exciting panel and discussion. So starting off, I want to emphasize that we welcome all comments and questions. And with that said, we ask that everyone keeps an open mind and is intentional about learning more and trying to broaden your perspectives. And I also like to emphasize that NALMS is centered on lake management. However, NALMS also has members and guests from all professional backgrounds, such as engineers, educators, lake managers, scientists, politicians, and so much more. So we're all pretty varied in this field, right? So a little bit more about the North American Lake Management Society. Our sole mission is to forge partnerships among citizens, science professionals in this field for today and tomorrow. And some of the things that we do, we host an annual symposia, and this year we're going to be in Canada, which is really exciting. It's going to be in
Mhm.
Kelowna, British Columbia. We also have a Robert Carlson Setchi Dip In and a Lakes Appreciation Month. And like I mentioned, I'm the Jedi intern, and it's part of this program for the Jedi program. But in addition, we also have professional certification programs, student programs, and much more. And one of like the main things that we have is our Lakeline magazine, and it just gives folks to an opportunity to share their knowledge and what they're researching in and broaden it to like more bigger audience. And some of the ways we can all get involved is to become a member, participate in these committees or programs, and overall, just like I said, share your knowledge and experience by contributing to these publications. And another one would be to attend the conferences, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, but I had the privilege to attend last year's, and it was very exciting. Um, and yeah, that's a little bit about NOMS. And to expand more about the JEDI program or committee in specific, we are committed to continuing our efforts to create a more equitable and diverse and inclusive organization as we advance in lake management, water management, and science. And For me personally, as an intern, my goals have been really centered on increasing NALMS membership through outreach and engagement, and also hosting webinars such as this one and expanding our global outreach. So I don't know if anyone in this joined in last time. I brought in a organization from Mexico, and we're just working on expanding that global outreach overall. Another key part of this is providing translation support to make projects and communications more accessible for Spanish-speaking communities. And if you'd like to learn more, we do have our website here, our JEDI program. So um, I will be pretty honest. I feel like I always need to like refresh myself with what justice, equity, and diversity inclusion means, especially like justice and equity. So I thought it'd be good to give a good overview of this to everyone here. And so starting off, justice, for example, is removing systemic barriers to ensure all individuals and communities can live fully and with dignity. And specifically in this field, this can look like recognizing who is most impacted by environmental degradation and historically excluded from decision-making processes in water policy, right? And as far as equity goes, this can look like distributing resources based on need, recognizing that unequal starting points in systemic isms like racism and sexism create different barriers. And like you all are doing just by participating today, you are supporting programs such as DAI programs like this one that work to correct these imbalances and then reinforce them. And for diversity, um, this is more about acknowledging and valuing the full range of human differences that shape all of our experiences and access to our opportunities. So there's a lot of like, benefits to diversity as it allows for innovation, creativity, open-mindedness, resilience, and more. And specifically in this field, um, you know, we're working with people all the time, and it's a crucial part of our work. And being able to acknowledge this in this field is even more important. Um, Even just like me personally, as a student studying environmental engineering, um, you know, you're sorry, you're here to help the community that you serve, and it's really important to be able to connect and be well versed with everyone. So yeah, and in addition, inclusion is a little similar, and it's in the sense of fostering a sense of belonging by centering, valuing, and amplifying the voices and perspectives, and also the styles of those who experience more barriers based on their identities. So when people feel recognized and acknowledge for their presence and values, it opens doors to engagement and belonging. And NALM strives to cultivate a society built on mentorship, encouragement, intolerance, and mutual respect. So I really do appreciate NALMS for still having this program and really putting value and effort into this. So moving forth, so what have NALMS members expressed? So last year, I shared a survey centered on JEDI values and how to expand our outreach efforts. And I wanted to share some themes and ideas that are relevant to this discussion. So some folks had ideas on geographic inclusion, asking like, oh, how can those of us in areas that are geographically disconnected from Latin America, for example, support my efforts? Expanding on beyond the US, folks expressed that NOMS can be or seem to be more US centric and maybe lacking expanding more in like Canada and Mexico. But like I mentioned earlier, we're trying to really push this effort to be more inclusive in that sense. And, you know, even just like hosting this webinar with an organization from Mexico puts them makes them more recognized and people can like look into them more and we can like work more collaboratively, right? And another part that um, people mentioned was prioritizing Indigenous and Afro-descendant voices, communicating both languages, share share data more transparently, avoid extractive practices, and measure equity outcomes, just to overall better align outreach with community-defined priorities. And then some other things that folks have expressed was the idea of reshaping a culture in this environment and really any environment, right? So they wanted to essentially emphasize that everyone shares responsibility for creating a welcome environment. And I believe this to be true as well. I think we all have a responsibility to um, make people feel seen and heard, and that there's many benefits to that as people are more willing to express their ideas and whatnot. And finally, one of the more positive ones that I found was about our feedback. So, as many folks may know, that this current administration has had DEI cuts, and some folks also expressed just the appreciation of still having um, JEDI as it is very much needed. And again, I appreciate everyone who has joined today. Just goes to show that this very much isn't still needed, right? So a little bit like, I guess, a specific little statistic, right? So as I mentioned, we do have these annual symposiums, and just to kind of highlight, in 2024, we had our conference in Lake Tahoe, and as you can see, 450 people attended. 70% were white, and then 10 or less than 10% were from other races. So this kind of ties into the inclusion and diversity part, and kind of recognizing that there is this imbalance in this field, and it may not be as apparent to some other folks than, or I don't know how to say this, but it may not be as apparent. Um, but it's important to kind of visualize this and be like, okay, there's this imbalance in this field. And for me personally, I got to go to the NALMS Symposia last year in South Carolina. I got to table for the JEDI program, and I got to network with a lot of folks from all around the US and even Mexico. And it was really enlightening to hear from everyone's perspectives, but it still reflected this kind of, I guess, discrepancy and representation in this field. But, there could have also be other factors such as, being able to take time to go to these conferences and whatnot. And yeah, just wanted to share that with you guys. And to touch a little bit more on representation in the water industry, according to the World Bank water data, on average, men hold 79% jobs in water utilities, and they comprise 78% of engineers, 76% of managers in these workplaces. And some of these barriers that kind of have allowed this to happen are gender biases in hiring processes, a lack of role models, and wage gaps. And one of the key things I was looking into was education and really the lack of role models. Just being able to, look up to someone in this field and, kind of reinforce yourself like, hey, this is something I can do as I see someone in the shoes that I would want to be in, right? And I think there's definitely more progress now, and this fact is based on a global data, right? So not so much from the US, but just overall to really emphasize the disparity in this. And I want to also share like the benefits of this, right? So evidence from the private sector shows that companies with higher rates of diversity perform a lot better, with benefits such as lower employee turnover, more innovative environment, enjoy better governance, and can more effectively deliver products and services, which is a really crucial part for water and sanitation service provision. So moving forth, there's a lot of progress being made, and I just kind of want to highlight these organizations that are making this effort happen. A few folks may know about maybe not few, sorry, maybe a couple people may know about the American Water Works Association, AWWA, and just recently they were working to really incorporate more DEI initiatives into the program and kind of set a standard for other folks in similar agencies and corporations. And again, it goes into, increasing the involvement of underrepresented groups and just overall be more responsive to all the users and again tying into the responsibility we all have as professionals to meet the needs of all the people we work for, right? And another organization I want to highlight was Water Education for Latino Leaders. This program, or sorry, this organization has a program where they're training and placing 70 women, people of color, and Latinos in water and utility sectors with an emphasis more on water policy. And again, it ties into the importance of education and being able to, represent not only your group, but like other people of color and other misrepresented folks in this field. And so why am I sharing this? I believe it can serve as a source or a resource and or inspiration to uphold these values in this workplace better. Moving forth, um, to kind of just wrap up. So what can we all do, right? Um, it can be easier said than done, but oh, I think my camera, okay. We can all work on fostering a welcoming environment in our workplaces. This can be, the more general things like acknowledging different cultures and different holidays like such, um, and also recognizing your privilege and how you can advocate for others. Example of this that I've thought about is even just being like bilingual and like speaking a lot of languages, like using that as an advantage to connect with communities you work for and work with, right? And another one is to recognize that it may be uncomfortable and sensitive at first, but it's important that we're making this effort. And finally, educating yourself by hearing from others' experiences, like we will soon. So with that said, I would like to introduce our panelists. So panelists, if you guys could have your camera and mic ready. I'm gonna start with um, Dr. Leopoldo Mendoza Espinosa. He is a professor at the Universidad Autónoma de Baja California. He's also a deputy director at the Oceanographic Research Institute. And he's a professor specializing in wastewater treatment and reuse. He earned his PhD in water sciences from Cranfield University, and he's a leading advocate for water reuse in Baja California. And he's also helped advance regional implementation report efforts. In addition, he serves as the editor of Water Science and Technology and associate editor of the Water Environmental Journal. So please welcome Dr. Leopoldo Mendoza Espinosa. Um, please share anything else you'd like to share, and we'll continue with our other panelists' introductions.
Well, thank you. Sorry, thank you, Angel, and for the invitation. I don't know, do you want me to talk a little bit more about myself?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. I am more specialized, as Angel says, in wastewater treatment and reuse. but I got invited to CALMS conference in San Diego last year, at the end of last year, by Mark Butel. And to my surprise, I mean, the talk and everything went really well, and everybody was very nice because I didn't talk about lakes, you know, I talked about wastewater treatment, and the way that water reuse can possibly be incorporated into the water cycle so that we can maintain a balance in the watershed without needing to bring water from other places like desalination or more aqueducts. So I'm very happy to be here, and I can talk a lot about let's say, the binational relationship, you know, between the US and Mexico in terms of water. More focused on the Colorado River because Baja California, you know, receives water from the Colorado River. I'm not very competent on the other river, on Rio Grande, Rio Bravo, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Leopoldo. I'll go on to Rosalva Morales. She is a principal water resource specialist at the city of San Diego. She was born in Tijuana, Baja California, Mexico, and holds a civil engineering degree from San Diego State University, and has spent 30 years with the city of San Diego. Her experience spans water operations, including reservoirs, pipelines, and system optimization, with a strong focus on interagency coordination and reliable water delivery. So if you'd like to give a little more introduction, Rosalva.
Sure. Thank you, Angel. Yeah, as you mentioned, I was born in Tijuana. Just a quick review of my life. And I came here to the US when I was a teenager. I went to San Diego State, and I was fortunate to have work in a few internships to get ready for when I graduated, Caltrans, County San Diego, City of San Diego. And when I graduated, I was lucky enough to get a job. Fortunate with the City of San Diego, and I've been here since my last 24 years of my career. I have dedicated it to water supply management, working in our surface reservoir system at the City of San Diego, nine dams and reservoirs, conveyance system, supplying water to our three water treatment plants, coordinating with the County Water Authority and bringing imported water to the city of San Diego to supply our residents with a $250 million annual budget to purchase water, in addition to optimizing and maximizing the use of our local water, saving 60 to 80 million dollars a year with our natural resources. Um, Thank you. I really enjoy this conversation, and I have a lot of stories to tell, a lot of to share in terms of working as a female in a male-dominated environment with engineers and operators, and the diversified workforce that I've been through in the last 30 years. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. All right, we'll move on to our last panelist, Gerardo Martinez. He is a water resource control engineer at the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board. He's a first-generation college graduate who holds a PhD from the Colorado School of Mines, where he collaborated with underrepresented small-scale mining communities in Peru to advance environmental management and reduce mercury use in gold recovery. He also holds a master's degree from UC Davis, Go Ags, and is passionate about advancing water management that protects both ecosystems and communities that depend on them. So please welcome Gerardo. Are you there, Gerardo? Okay, awesome. Sweet.
Yeah, I'm here. Can
Or
you
if you
see?
like, Yeah, I can see you. Mhm.
All right, cool. Yeah, first off, I want to say, thank you, Angel, for inviting me to be on a part of this panel. As it says here, I'm a first gen in like my family to go to college. The highest degrees that, or not even degrees, but the highest education that my parents had was middle school. So this is like something that is very near and dear into my heart. Um, I was born and raised in Inglewood, California. I did my undergrad at Syracuse in civil engineering because I thought I wanted to work on bridges, buildings, and roads. Then I decided that wasn't for me. I did my master's at UC Davis in environmental engineering, where I focused on mercury contamination issues in riverine fish and sediment in Peru. And I know my advisor, Stephen McCord, is here. So yeah, shout out to him. Then I did my PhD in the mining engineering program at Colorado School of Mines, where I focused on basically more mercury contamination issues in water, air, and working with small scale miners becoming legal and trying to steer them away from mercury use and stuff like that. It came full circle, where now it's kind of weird that I always was kind of like anti-government and now I work for the government. So, yeah, I work for the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board. I'm in the planning and total maximum daily load division where I focus on developing and implementing mercury TMDLs in the Bay. Aside from many other things, I work on HABs, I work on oxygenation in lakes and reservoirs. I'm very involved in the San Francisco Bay Regional Monitoring Program, working on contaminants of emerging concern, working with subsistence fishers in the bay and stuff like that. So yeah, I think I'll leave it at that, so we can keep going and get to the questions.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. I'm really excited to hear more. For more context, everyone, I did get to talk with each of our panelists before this and get to know them a little bit more. And yeah, I'm just really excited to continue. So, right now, if you guys have any questions, we are going to start pulling from the Q&A box. Um, I'll start off with some questions and kind of jump around with questions from you guys and also mine. But yeah, let me just get settled in. All right. So to start off, we'll kind of go by one. And this is a question I asked all of you during our little interview. And I just kind of wanted to ask what comes to mind when you think about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I guess I can start off with Rosalva, if you'd like to share about.
Sure. I think that, we get really busy with our jobs. We all try to do a good job. Um, and I think that um, a lot of times it's good to just kind of take a step back and just look at who works with us, what are the different cultures and the different ages and different backgrounds, and just be just reminded that, all of right in the workplaces we have laws that protect our equality, our rights, our backgrounds. So just be more reminded of that. Um, Particularly myself, I think some of the people that I work with, or some of my previous employees or current employees, um, I'm very open to those to be appreciative of the different backgrounds and cultures that people come from. Um, and I think it the technical part of our work is a high percentage, but there's also the people part of our work is a very very high percentage. on how we direct ourselves to others and how we are considerate to others' opinions. And also, as you mentioned, the inclusion part, where the more we allow others to speak their voice and their opinion, and the more that creativity that you can seek, coming from them. So just in general, how my professional career has been.
Thank you so much for sharing. Um, Gerardo or Leopoldo, would you like to share with that question?
Sure. The first thing that comes to my mind when justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion is mentioned, at least in this part of Mexico, in terms of water distribution, I think um, there is inequity in the sense that the distribution of water in the centers, in the population centers, in the cities is very uneven, very heterogeneous. I think that's the word. And it all depends. It mostly depends on your income, you know, because people with high income live in places where they can afford the water and the distribution network and everything is well placed and operated. And people with lower income tend to live, in other around the city center or in new suburbs that do not have this service of sanitation perhaps, but water not. So so most of the time, people with a lower income are the ones who have to pay the highest rates for the water. Why? Because uh, again, most of the population would only have to open their tap, to have water. And in these new places around the city, you might need to have water tanks, and also I can't remember the name in English, but las pipas, the big trucks, the water trucks, that go and deliver water, sell water to those people. That water is much more expensive than than tap water for the main population. So that obviously is very unfair. And and most of the water operators have to try to keep up with the demand, with the increasing population of our cities. And but they're always behind. I mean, it's very difficult for them to have the economic resources to keep growing and growing. So at the end, I think it's a question of poor organization and poor planning. One of the main differences, and this is something that I do admire from the US and California in particular, is that the plans are, they plan for a long time, medium, long range. And in Mexico, at least in Baja California, I mean, we always want like kind of to invent water distribution and everything every 6 years, every time the local governments, the state government changes, you know, and even the federal government. So we need to be better at planning and have clear medium and long term objectives, because otherwise we're always be trying to catch up instead of really, going ahead.
Yeah, yeah, I forget that too. Like when I go to Mexico to visit my family, I'm like, oh, what are those like big tanks up there? And like, I think you're right. Like those tanks are a lot more more expensive and a lot more like work to kind of like maintain, right? So definitely relevant to this. Thanks for sharing. Um, Gerardo, would you like to share about this question?
Yeah, I think something that came to mind, when you put up the definitions for justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, I think about like in my profession, it's about thinking about who benefits from the environmental decisions that we make and who might unintentionally be left out. There's times where some people are left out from decision making, and it's because of lack of reaching out and recognizing that environmental burdens haven't historically been distributed equally. Other things that we have to consider with JEDI is not assuming that everyone has the same resources, the same access to information, or the same political voice, and these are all things that factor into JEDI with lake management and, anything associated with environment and water. Um, I think that diversity is big. Just thinking because all complex environmental problems will benefit from multiple perspectives and just getting on the ground reality from the people who are most impacted. And I think that the most important takeaway is that JEDI is not separate from technical work. I think that it's about making sure that our technical decisions serve all communities fairly. And I think, Stephen and I, who have worked a lot in developing countries and, even taking from my experience in Peru, a lot of the decisions are made in Lima, in the capital, and they are very far from reality when you go and see miners in the field, So when you actually are in the field, things are very different. Um, Similarly in the US, a lot of our consumption rates are based off of, you know, surveys that are very old, specifically here in the Bay, we use our consumption rate from 1998. And so now we're redoing that and meeting people in the field and redoing these surveys to get a new consumption rate for PFAS and mercury and PCBs and stuff like that. So I think, all that ties back in and just kind of reminds me that we can't look at those two things separate. We have to find that intersection and combine the technical and the social.
Yeah, no, I strongly agree. I think it's really important to like really connect these both. And yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing. And you kind of touched on it, Gerardo. I think it kind of ties into my next question, which is like when thinking about the service you provide to society, is your whole community represented in this work? And I know for Gerardo, specifically, you mentioned like, doing your outreach efforts and, using or like knowing Spanish, right, to really help you with that. And yeah, could you talk a little bit more about that? That'd be great.
Yeah, I'll go first. So is our whole community represented in the service, right? That we provide. And I think the honest answer would be that we're continuing to work toward that goal. I don't think we're fully achieving it. As I mentioned, we are doing things better and we're trying to meet communities where they are rather than have them come to us. Kind of how I shared at the beginning, I was always anti-government growing up in Inglewood, being first generation and, having this perception that the government is against us. And now I'm on the other side of that. And ultimately, regulatory agencies have relied on technical expertise. We have left out that, that implicit knowledge and, participation with communities and stuff like that. So, but now we are doing things differently, as I mentioned, and we're trying to strive for that. And we actually are trying to get EPA funding to work with community-based organizations where community-based organizations go out and fish, and we will pay for the fish and analyze those fish from their specific area for, mercury, PCBs, and possibly PFAS and stuff like that. So it's kind of like working together and collaborating, and I've seen that expansion and um, these new outreach methods that are definitely improving relationships and striving to represent community as a whole. So I think that we're doing things a little bit better. I don't think that we are where we want to be yet.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Um, if any other, like Rosalva or Leopoldo would like to respond.
I can go real quick. I think, well, just as you know, the city of San Diego is, pretty large. We have our council, which we have council members that are representing different communities. A lot of our items go to, for council hearings. The city of San Diego has their own website. Our department, Public Utilities Department, we have our own website where we um, notify the public. We provide information on our reservoir and our lakes status and changes. We have different stakeholders. We have, the residents, the receivers of our water, our potable water. We also have fishing folks in our reservoirs, and our reservoirs, most of them are used for also recreation. So our reservoirs priority is for water supply. However, we do have various activities. Some of them have even water contact. So the city is very informative to all those groups. We also provide, we have emergency storage in our reservoirs. So in case of an impending system failure, aqueduct failure, getting water from imported water, we also have emergency storage to supply all our City of San Diego residents during an emergency. We also have stakeholders on other agencies that we provide, that we share storage with in our reservoirs, that we also deliver water to them through various interagency agreements. So we are as communicative as inclusive as we can be. Definitely, we try to, particularly in my career, we established a very strong working relationship with other agency operation representatives. And so anyway, yeah, it's pretty it's a variety of stakeholders that we have.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, I know we're kind of running short on time, but I wanted to pull a question from the audience. This is from Ben Rhodes. I'll leave it up to anyone who would like to share. We'll just have one response. So it's, do you all feel that there's an additional scrutiny placed on you when discussing environmental considerations or otherwise overly politicized considerations of a project because of your backgrounds? So, are you guys able to see this question? Or if any of you would like to comment?
I'm sorry, can you read the question again real quick?
Oh yeah, and I saw that Alyssa, she also put it in the chat. Yeah, I can read it out. Do you all feel that there is an additional scrutiny placed on you when discussing environmental considerations or otherwise overly politicized considerations of a project because of your backgrounds? It's a good question.
I mean, in my experience, I've seen sometimes a lot of scrutiny uh, beyond what is required. I think I see a lot of processes taking a lot longer just to discuss particular, objective. I think that I am not a environmental representative, but we do work a lot. We do have our own section in our department. What I have seen is that sometimes there's another section in the department that doesn't see things as clearly as we do when we're speaking in terms about a project. And a lot of times it seems like they're the ones that are putting in kind of like the barrier before we even go to the environmental agencies. We've had those issues internally. And in terms of looking at us not being an expert, I'm not sure I have felt that, but I have felt that we have our own internal barriers when it comes to being efficient in expediting those processes.
So thank you. Thank you for sharing. Any comments about that one, Gerardo or Leopoldo? Or we can move on to another question.
I don't know. I perhaps I can only add that because I'm not in a water agency, but I am actually in academia, then that might not, apply to me or has not applied to me in my career. But what I can say is that us academics, at least in Mexico, we're not always invited to the water meetings. I mean, to the meetings where the water decisions are taken. So when we do get invited, and most of the time, or in my case, we defend obviously that the decisions should be based on technical data and on science rather than on political motives. Okay, so yeah, that has, I think has had an impact on my career because I mean sometimes I get invited and I say that and then I don't get invited anymore. But we always try to get to be there, you know. There are other ways of participating. Sometimes you need the help of the farmers, for example, or you need the help of NGOs of the society. So there is there are ways, to speak out and to that your point of view can be taken into consideration.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I'll move on to another question. I for Rosalva, actually, it's could Rosalva talk a little bit more about being a woman entering the water resource slash operation field and any advice you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, um, and I think I can relate with Gerardo. I'm out of 14 siblings, and I was the only one that went to college. So it was just going through my own personal family kind of breaking some barriers was the beginning of what was ahead for me. When I got to this work environment, at the beginning, it was kind of difficult. There was just me and another female in a very large group of engineers. But right away, I had to start learning how to send out notifications for field staff to do system changes practically me telling others what to do. And it was difficult. It was difficult for others to receive that. It was difficult for some men to get direction from me as a female. I'm not sure it was because of my culture, but the female part, it was evident. I had to learn to navigate through that and to stay professional and to do a good job because at the end of the day, I had to demonstrate that I could handle the job. So it just continued to strengthen my expertise in the work field and water resources engineering. water resources management. Continue to educate myself, continue to learn from others that were willing to teach me more, and just looking for ways also to strengthen my collaboration, even with those other, with the workforce. And it took some time, but it was definitely, a successful career, successful relationships that I created with men and women throughout my career. Um, it's I think that times have changed now. Now because of my experience, I have a strong support to other younger engineers coming. We welcome students to work with us. We have not currently, but we had a number of students of interns that had come through here from the different universities in San Diego and even outside of San Diego. And we are very supportive. And I use my experience as, what I would have liked to have the support when I was at that age and when I was starting my career. So I support a lot of the young males and females coming through us here. We're very supportive. We open the doors to them. We also help them when they graduate, and we have like a 99% rate of them getting full-time jobs when they graduate. Also here, we have some very, very successful engineers that have moved up and promoted, men and women. So I think that I use my experience to kind of learn on what to do and how to support others and encourage others and do whatever I can while I'm still here.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Sorsala.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, like again, I expressed in our little interview too how, inspiring that is and like, being able to kind of reflect on like what you kind of wished you had starting your career and giving that support to others going into it. So it's amazing. That's awesome. Um, so I know we have about 4 minutes left. Yes, let me see. I think we can end it with this last question we just got from Olivia. Thank you. Um, Olivia, to anyone who would like to respond. So can you talk about any frameworks, policies, or plans that your organizations have adopted, implemented to ensure JEDI is fully incorporated to your work? Thank you, Olivia, for this question.
Can I just add? Yes, in the university, and I think worldwide, Mexico included, things are changing, slowly, but they are changing, and we are more aware of these values, in the workplace or as a society. I remember, when I was a kid, obviously, the things that our parents would or the way they would educate us, and the way they were educated are very different from how you can educate your kids now. So this has made us change, and at least in many universities and in the UABC in particular, there's now new legislation so that people, are better protected, I suppose, and the voices more voices are heard and not just ignored. So I think this is positive. Also, as an educator, we need to change as well. We need to in a classroom, whenever we see students, with different backgrounds and different ideas. Some years ago, perhaps it was easy to dismiss, or to make aside, put aside. But now you cannot do that. You need, to make an effort to bring them to you and to transmit whatever you're trying to do. to students. So it's very interesting. I find it challenging, but also I think it's better, as a society, as a society, I think we are moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you. Any final thoughts from anyone who have like a minute or so?
Yeah, I'll add on to the question by Olivia. Can you talk about any frameworks, policies, or plans? You know, right now is a very weird time, with this presidency and stuff like that. So I'm not gonna get like super political, but it was kind of we noticed a shift of avoiding that language for a little bit, like however, kind of implicitly knowing that California is a bubble, it's very different. And we always prioritize these kinds of things, regardless if, we can't explicitly say them. And I think it's going back to where we're talking about it again. I think that we have a lot of environmental justice initiatives. We prioritize disadvantaged communities in our projects. We're out in the field a lot. And then internally, we have a lot of great mentoring programs and stuff like that. And I think the water boards is might be an outlier. We have a lot of women in our office, which is really cool, to see that. But I do think that, um, we don't have any of these policies really adopted. I think it's mainly just our internal plans and initiatives that are kind of carrying us through. Um, so I think that, community engagement is big, public participation is big, equity considerations, and then even something as basic as I'm currently getting certified. Although Spanish is my first language, in government, you have to be certified under a second language. So I'm currently working on getting being bilingual certified so I could translate a lot of our work, translate our public notices, translate emails going out into Spanish, so that's something that we're doing. And I'm proud of that, so that's it's those baby steps and turning the dial just a little bit.
So thank you for sharing, Gerardo. And thank you all for sharing and like expressing your experiences and yeah, just thank you for being open to this conversation and thank you all for joining in as well. I like to also thank again our panelists for your time and yeah, thank you all for so much. And just to close off really quick, sorry about going over time. So everyone will receive a follow-up email with the recording of this webinar, contact information list, and resource shared. And if you'd like to learn more about our JEDI program, you can scan the QR code here. And finally, like I mentioned, the survey responses, you can also respond to that as well. If you want to help continue our outreach and share more about your JEDI values further. And yeah, I'll leave these slides up for now. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining. Put a little thank you slide at the end as well. But I'll go back to this.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.